Good morning, church. Yeah, morning. It's wonderful to see all of you here at CIC today. So I'm not sure if anyone remembers me, but I'd like to introduce myself again. I'm Pastor Joong Kim, one of the pastors at Riverside Church. I'm also the leader of the Night Mills community, NMC, an organization that helps the homeless and the marginalized. Maybe you remember that last year I preached about homelessness and marginalization and talk about my homeless ministry that is done at Daejeon Station. And these are the photos I shared with you guys last year. Yeah, can you remember that? No? Yes, and thank you very much anyway. And as you might have noticed from my accent, English is my first language. I appreciate your patience, and I will be reading my script carefully, not just for you guys, but for myself as well. This year, I started a new project with my homeless friend, a photography project. Usually, they're the ones that people take picture of. But in this project, they get to hold the camera and take pictures themselves. So I want to help them to create something themselves and show that they are capable, giving them a sense of independence. Some people might wonder if this is possible because cameras are expensive and not easy to learn or use. But I'm really curious to see the world through their eyes. What do they see and what do they find the precious and important? I also imagine, what if the simple act of taking pictures could light a faint spark of hope within them? More than anything, I can't help but wonder, maybe their perspective is similar to how Jesus saw the world, working with the poor and those who struggle. And perhaps their way of seeing things could help open our own eyes, especially in a busy world where we so often stop paying attention around us. Maybe their perspective could awaken something in us. If things go well, I hope to publish a photo book and hold an exhibition at the end of the year. So I would love your support, even financial support, and interest in this project. However, there is fundamental problem with photography as a medium. To put it simply, photography may seem to present reality as it is, but in truth, it inevitably reduces reality to a mere image. The well-known American writer and literary critic, Susan Sontag, analyzed how photography distorts reality and changes the way we see the world. She once argued that while photos provide information, but they can also numb our sense of reality. When we repeatedly see images of war or suffering, we might become desensitized. This is very famous photos, which means we stop feeling the urgency to take action. And if you think about it, this is not wrong. Let me show you some photos I've taken. And these are pictures of homeless individuals. They might look aesthetic, but in reality, their lives are full of pain and suffering. Suffering is so profound that no pictures could ever fully capture. That's why Susan Sontag once said, an individualized society turns its citizens into image junkies. This is an irresistible form of mental pollution. people keep reducing the act of experiencing into the act of looking. She's right. Photography often turns what we should be experiencing firsthand into something we just observe. Instead of deeply engaging with reality, we become passive consumers. A photo may seem to bring us closer to reality, but in many ways, it actually distances us from it. Rather than stepping into the suffering of others, we keep a safe distance and just watch. And think about it. When we see images of war or poverty, do we truly engage with their pain, or we remain as distant spectators? Not everyone reacts this way, of course, but we can't deny that this is growing tendency in today's world. And here is the surprising part. The same thing can happen in worship and in church. So when we see impactful stories, images, and videos during a service, are we truly stepping into the pain of others, or are we just consuming their stories without taking any real action? The Carl Ederman puts it this way in his book, Not a Fan, Becoming a Completely Committed Follower of Jesus. Yes. Please, next. Yeah, this one. The biggest threat to the church today is fans who call themselves Christians but aren't actually interested in following Christ. They want to be close enough to Jesus to get all the benefits, but not so close that it requires anything from them. So what he is pointing out is that many churches today have become filled not with true disciples who follow Jesus Christ with their lives, but with fans who just come to watch worship rather than worshiping with whole heart or living it out. The Bible passage we will read today raises a similar concern. Let's read 1 John chapter 3, 16 to 18 together. Yeah. So start. We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers and sisters. But whoever has worldly goods and sees his brothers or sister in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God remain in him? Little children, let's not love with word or with tongue, but in deed and truth. In today's passage, the phrase "he laid down his life for us" appears only once in 1 John and 6 times in the Gospel of John. This shows how central the idea of Jesus giving up his life for us is in John's theology. So, what does it really mean that Jesus laid down his life for us? Life, after all, is one of the most precious things a person has. And the fact that Christ willingly gave up his life for us is the greatest expression of love. Jesus showed us that the highest form of love is to lay down one's life for others. That's why John says that we, as Christians, also have a duty to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters, just like Jesus did. But let's be honest, the problem is how many people in the world can actually do that? It is a very difficult question. Actually, I never stood here and casually told people, hey, you need to give up your life for others. That's what real love is. Because the truth is, I haven't done that myself. I sometimes find it challenging when I hear people talking about that kind of radical love so easily, because it's not easy and we all know how hard it is. But here is the thing. Even John knew this reality very well. Most of us won't be asked to perform some heroic act where we literally have to die for someone else. That's not something that happens every day. However, what does happen almost every day is this. We encounter people around us who need help, kindness, and care. The opportunity to help a brother or sister in need is always there, often right beside us. That's why John in verse 17 uses an intentional shift. In verse 16, he uses the plural brothers, but in verse 17, he switches to the singular, a brother. It is deliberate. He's moving the conversation from big, abstract ideas to something much more personal and daily thing. It's not just talking about laying down your life in a heroic way. He's telling you to meet the needs of the person right next to you. Because if we can't even help the neighbor beside us, what's the point in talking about dying for others? Honestly, that would be hypocrisy. That reminds me of something the greatest Christian apologist, C.S. Lewis, once said. So let me read it to you. Yeah. It is easier to be enthusiastic about humanity with a capital H than it is to love individuals, men and women, especially those who are uninteresting, exasperating, depraved, or otherwise unattractive. Loving everybody in general may be an excuse for loving the body in particular. It really hits me, doesn't it? Yeah. Thank you. I also fall into that temptation all the time. I talk a lot about helping the homeless through my ministry, but frankly, there are so many times I don't even know each individual's story or even their name. Though sometimes they don't want to tell their life story or their name. Nevertheless, true loving individuals one by one is really hard. And maybe that's why one of the biggest challenges that Christians and the church face today is this. We eagerly watch every detail of what happens on the other side of the world through the screens, yet we fail to look at the faces of our neighbors right beside us. Just like today's passage in verse 17, we see those in need, but we've closed our heart. So biblical scholars call this attitude conscious indifference. It's not that we don't see, it's that we choose to ignore. That's exactly what John is criticizing. In verse 17, many translations say, closes his heart, but actually in Greek, the original translation of the heart is compassion. And compassion is such an important word. In its Latin root, compati, combines com meaning with, and pati meaning to suffer. In other words, compassion means to suffer with someone. So by the phrase, closes his heart, John probably means that the problem is to stop willing to suffer with another. And here, John makes it clear, if we stop being compassionate and ignore the needs of others, the love of God cannot dwell within us. To share a bit more about the photo project, I started this project earlier this month, and as I got into it, I realized I needed a camera and some equipment. And thankfully, Pastor John supported me financially, and I was able to buy what I needed. But after receiving the support and getting to gear, I felt a weight on my shoulder, a sense of responsibility to produce impressive images, something really meaningful. And honestly, that pressure started to get to me. However, the funny thing is, I only picked up photography last month myself. It was first time to buy the camera, and it doesn't even make sense that I'm the one teaching photography while I'm still learning it. Because I felt rushed, I found myself going out to Daejeon station more often than usual to meet with my homeless friends. And since I had to teach them how to use the camera, I stayed close to them, guiding them step by step as they learned. And I was right there next to them, our cheeks almost touching, and taking pictures together, laughing, clapping when they took decent shot, and constantly telling them how proud I was of their pictures. We would sit down to have a coffee, share meals, and talk for a long time. And after spending a number of these moments with them, I've come to realize something important. It's not really about the pictures themselves. It's not about capturing the perfect shot. What I've come to realize is that the heart of this project is about being there for them and standing alongside them, sharing life, building relationship, meeting their needs, and working side by side. So I would like to show you a few pictures that my homeless friends took this month. Would you like to see the pictures? Yeah. Okay. Slowly, please. No, the previous one. So if you see that the light, okay, this beautiful, right? Sorry, this in the Daejeon station, and also Daejeon station and Daejeon station. Next one, and then homeless people they are. So because we are close to each other, so we can easily take pictures each other. And the next one, and I went early in the morning because they have to wake up 5 a.m. because they cannot sleep over the 5 a.m. because people come to the Daejeon station and they have to wake up. So this is the early in the morning, the pictures. And next one, yeah, also. And then, the maybe last one. Okay, thank you very much. So what do you think? Not too bad, right? Honestly, the pictures themselves are not particularly stunning. But what is truly beautiful is the story behind them, the time we shared, the connection we built. Maybe it's the story that makes these simple pictures feel more meaningful because we've heard about the journey behind them. Yes, I believe that's where the real beauty lies, and that's where love happens. I truly believe that when we open the door of compassion and when we hold someone's hand and choose to work alongside them, sometimes, by God's grace, we will be gifted with truly beautiful moments worth capturing, not just with a camera, but with our heart. So my prayer for all of us today is this. Please, almost done. So let it come. Yeah. My English is not good, so I have to write in very short script. Okay. Thank you very much. So my prayer for all of us today is this. May we realize that meeting the small needs of the person right next to us is no less an act of love than laying down one's life. I want to say, let's resist the temptation to be consciously indifferent. Instead, let's be consciously caring. choosing to notice, to care, to open the door to compassion, to hold the hands of those around us, and to be the kind of Christians who are willing to work alongside those who are struggling and those who are beside us. I believe that's when pictures become real. Thank you very much.